welcome to SVG-TV's news for Wednesday, 23rd of June, 2021. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. Director General of Finance and Planning Edmund Jackson said he is deeply concerned and worried for SVG's economy, and having a large percentage of the population vaccinated against COVID-19 will play a critical role in keeping the economy afloat. Jackson, who was a part of the panel of discussion on Tuesday for Public Service Week, painted a grim outlook for the country's economy, which he said cannot afford to contract further. He said the authorities have been made aware of the potential economic impacts in the long term if SVG falls behind in its vaccination rate, which would be disastrous for all concessions.
And we are contracting further. Our worst case projections for contraction in GDP is up to 7.25%. That's significant in a real economic sense, in real goods and services. So it ranges between 4.5% to about 7%. In any event, that is significant, coming off of a contraction of about 3% in 2020. So if we were to say, if you were to take the 3% last year, the worst case this year, you're talking about an economy decreasing in size, potentially 10%. If we are to go forward in 2022 with a further contraction, this could spell disaster for each and every citizen in this country.
The Director General of Finance and Planning said the government has done all it can to keep afloat with paying salaries, noting that it has gotten harder with SVG thrown into deeper public debt. He said in the COVID-19 environment, vaccines now determine economy's recovery, and here in SVG, economic recovery is worrying with a low vaccination rate.
What they are saying is that the world economy is going to bounce back well in 2022. The advanced economies of the world are going to lead that recovery. Both the United States and China are going to contribute at least 1/3, I believe, they said, of the growth that's going to be experienced in the world economy next year. Why? Because their vaccine rates are higher. The thing that they said, emerging economies, developing economies like ours, are lagging in vaccine rates, and our economies are projected to contract further, rather than improve, rather than grow in 2022. That is troubling. That is troubling. For us here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have managed so far. But I don't want persons to celebrate that too much, because in our managing, we have increased our indebtedness. Our public debt has increased drastically between 2019 and 2020, now moving into 2021. Because, of course, we have to borrow more for reconstruction and rehabilitation to mitigate the impacts of la souffrance.
Since the national vaccination campaign started on February 14, 2021, just over 24,000 doses of vaccines have been administered, with a small percentage of fully vaccinated persons. Jackson pointed out that in the OECS, SVG has the lowest vaccination rate.
I looked at the graphic that the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank posted recently on their website. And of all the member states in the currency union, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has the lowest vaccine rate in this region. You all will notice that if you look at television with a critical eye, all of the ads are pointing towards reopening of the economies. People are willing and eager to travel. However, I will tell you, we will be left behind in terms of tourism development if we do not get our numbers up, because persons will simply bypass us and head to another country in the region. It simply means that our ability to recover is going to be more difficult. I want to make the message clear.
The Director General defended the government's position, where it may appear as though they are forcing people to take the COVID-19 vaccines. He said while the messages may be clear or mixed, they are speaking from a level of concern and frustration.
I am not saying rush out there and take the vaccine if you don't, whatever. But it's a personal choice, but I encourage you, unless you have some medical reason, to look at it, think about it, and get vaccinated. Where I sit in the Ministry of Finance, I know what it is to keep the mill turning every month. I know how difficult it is to pay the salaries on a timely basis, to pay the public debt on a timely basis, because it is not a good thing to default, regardless of your economic circumstances, regardless of the shocks you're facing, because it leaves a level of uncertainty in the minds of creditors who lend you money, whether or not they should buy your paper on the market or not. So we have to make an effort to ensure that we maintain confidence in the credit markets. We have been doing reasonably well. The revenue has held, but it may not hold for much longer.
On June 7, 2021, the U.S. Center for Disease Control placed SVG at high risk for COVID-19 or level 3 on its travel advisory. Meanwhile, 11 new COVID-19 positive cases were reported from 173 samples processed on Monday, June 21, 2021, resulting in a positivity rate of 6.4%. 5 new recoveries were noted over the reporting period. 254 cases are currently active and 12 persons with COVID-19 have died. 2,207 cases of COVID-19 and 1,941 recoveries have been recorded in St. Vincent and the Grenadines since March 2020. The National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, said persons who persist in incorrect or no mask use, remain unvaccinated, and participate in mass gatherings will continue to be at risk for being infected and spreading COVID-19. As is happening now, the public is therefore urged to continue to use masks, sanitize, physically distance, and get vaccinated to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Minister responsible for public service, Frederick Stevenson, salutes all public servants in SVG on Public Service Day. The minister said the public servants have and continue to be resilient in making tremendous sacrifices for the country's development, which the government is thankful for.
I would like to express my profound gratitude to the thousands of hard-working public servants for keeping the government's machinery functioning. Let the spirit of this day's celebrations evoke and awake the value and virtue of all public servants, the friendship, strength, and existing relationships among public servants, highlight the relationships among the public, private, and social sectors, and encourage the quality service delivery offered to citizens.
The theme under which the day is being observed is resilient public service, recognizing the spirit and strength of public servants. Referencing the theme for Public Service Day, Minister Stevenson spoke about the efforts of public servants and others who were placed on the front line and went beyond the call of duty in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano.
The public servants of this country redouble their efforts and show their selflessness and commitment in the evacuation of all activities to assist in the saving of lives and making displaced citizens comfortable in their new environments. Their love for humanity were exemplified in transporting evacuees from the orange and red zones, organizing shelters to mimic the comfort of their own homes they had to flee at such short notice, providing and distributing food throughout the different shelters, managing the different warehouses for both food and non-food products, and providing psychosocial support for all Vincentians. Amidst all, they still managed to keep the various ministries, departments, and agencies operational.
The minister reminded public servants of their roles and what it means to be of service to the people, and at the same time asked that they strictly comply with the COVID-19 protocols and get vaccinated.
I thank those public servants whose Herculean efforts helped the nation weather these storms, and look forward to developing and building a modern, customer-focused, transparent, and productive public sector. I once more would like to thank all public servants for their unwavering dedication to service, and I trust that the week of activities to commemorate June 23rd, Public Servants' Day, would be a huge success. In closing, I want to strongly urge all our public servants to continue to adhere to the protocols put in place by the Ministry of Health as it relates to COVID-19.
It appears that a tropical wave which has been affecting the island over the last few days is becoming disorganized. However, it could reorganize and bring heavy rains. This is according to meteorologist with the SVG Met Services, Desiree Nevison-Jack. There is a plume of moisture that could linger for the rest of the week, and persons should take note of all advisories.
This afternoon, what is going to happen is that an upper-level trough is going to lend support to the westward moving wave, and flare-ups are likely. And flare-ups are like sudden heavy downpours and thunderstorm activity. And on the mainland, there's a possibility that we can experience about 20 millimeters of rainfall accumulation by tonight. As for the Grenadines are likely to see a higher amount, about 50 millimeters of rainfall by tonight. And tomorrow, again, we are expecting occasional showers. Thursday, we are expecting occasional showers. Friday, and we are forecasting that things are going to get a bit intense Friday night into Saturday morning. So we are monitoring that. And residents and motorists are urged to stay updated and to exercise caution.
The lead scientist monitoring La Soufrière had already indicated that once there is a rainfall, lahars or mud flows are likely to flow down the river valleys, hence the need for residents to pay close attention to the weather forecast. As La Soufrière volcano has again began to decrease following the slight uptick recorded last weekend. Lead monitoring scientist Lloyd Lynch, who was on NBC Radio this morning, said 10 earthquakes were recorded on Monday as against 40 recorded last weekend.
No. So over the last 3 days we had 25 events on Monday, 22 day before yesterday, and 20 over the last 24 hours. So it's settling back down, it seems, again. There were some traverses for gas yesterday, but I don't have the results as yet. In terms of activities, we are now focused on getting the summit stations restored or rebuilt, which is a better word.
Meanwhile, a helicopter from Antigua arrived in the state early in the week and have been carrying out surveys on the volcano. Lead monitoring scientists said it has been an eventful experience thus far, noting that the volcanologist Dr. Adam Stinton has also returned to the States to analyze the volcano.
But after speaking to Dr. Stinton, who is back on island to do some surveys, if you recall, he's the man who has been studying the dome growth. In his views, the whole house has been rebuilt. So that's what it's like up there. I don't have time to go into details. And in fact, we hope to get him on the air before he goes back Friday evening.
Yes.
He will be the best person to describe what we are seeing now and the implications.
Lynn said that one of the monitoring instruments was shut down. However, the problem has been rectified.
Yesterday, we had a bit of a technical glitch in that overnight we lost communications into Belmont, and we woke up with only one station coming in. So we had to push back our helicopter activities. because it's not safe to land on a active volcano without any sort of supervision from the observatory. So we didn't manage to get as much done yesterday as we wanted on the volcano. We dropped some stuff in, but the cloud cover quickly came in and we had to call off play for the day.
2 weeks ago, a British helicopter was here and they took pictures of the summit of the volcano. Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves said that the government has ordered housing material to assist with the repairing of houses that were damaged during the explosive eruptions of La Soufrière volcano. Speaking on radio this morning, Prime Minister Gonsalves said that the housing and physical infrastructures assessment is being done in the volcano-affected communities.
The assessments are going on, all the assessments, housing, etc., housing and physical infrastructure. We have ordered some housing material. People have to have a little patience with us, and I just want to say that obviously the first call on these materials, it relates to those who have actually suffered loss and damage during the volcano. There are other needs, but this particular program is relating to those who suffered loss and damage through the volcano.
The Prime Minister further noted that the cleanup process on the leeward side of the island is going well. He said he got feedback during a meeting he chaired on Monday with NEMO's Emergency Management Council, where all stakeholders were present.
You know, there in Chateaubriand, there are a lot of cleaning up to be done in Fitzhugh. Probably later this week, next week, they'll be properly in Fitzhugh. They have to be creative with the kind of equipment they're using, because entering Chateaubriand, because the bridge is not completed, they want a chaps entering the main Chateaubriand, and if you have to take the side road going wrong to plan, you know, when there's a big corner by the school, you have a little challenge, but they're trying to sort that out. In terms of the type of equipment now.
Dr. Gonsalves further noted that with proper precautions, cleaning up on the windward side of the island will push full steam ahead from next week.
Next week, all things being okay, and with all the proper precautions with the seismic, we intend to begin to do some cleaning up in the Orange Hill area, because you have water back there. I think water has either reached Turama or about to reach Turama, because they had some pipes broken. So the CWS has replaced them.
The opposition New Democratic Party and its members in Parliament will continue to raise the issue of the shooting of the private citizen Cornelius John when Parliament meets again on Tuesday, June 29th. The shooting incident allegedly involved Senator and Deputy Speaker of the House Ashel Morgan, Assistant Director of Public Prosecution Karim Nelson, and a third unidentified person. Opposition leader Dr. Godwin Friday was suspended from the last sitting of Parliament after a heated exchange with the Speaker of the House, Rochelle Ford, because of his objection for having Morgan in Parliament while the police were investigating the allegations of her involvement in the shooting incident. At a news conference today, Friday said as the leader of the opposition, he has an obligation to stand on principle for the people of SVG.
It is our duty to do so. The people of this country expect us to do so. And when there is such a widespread interest in this matter, an outcry in some parts of the public, and demands for action to be taken, I cannot sit silent. And the leader of the opposition and the opposition members in the parliament cannot and will not sit silent. So, in that regard,
Dr. Friday said that he has submitted a motion to be debated in Parliament on Tuesday on the conduct and responsibility of all members of Parliament.
Whereas this Honorable House must seek always to promote the values and principles enshrined in our laws and democratic traditions, and to foster respect for the rule of law. And whereas each member of Parliament is accountable to the public for their actions, their decisions and actions, and must submit themselves to whatever scrutiny is appropriate to their office, and whereas each member of Parliament shall never undertake any action which would cause significant damage to the reputation and integrity of the House of Assembly as a whole, or of its members generally.
The opposition leader said that the motion is a very serious one for Parliament to consider because, according to him, it affects the respect for the rule of law.
To consider, because the matter that it addresses is one that affects, of course, the private rights of the individuals who are involved, but more than that, it affects the administration of justice and respect for the rule of law. It touches very deeply on these matters, and so we have to be, as a society, concerned about them and to use whatever levers we have at our disposal to raise them, to debate them, to bring light, to shine light upon them, so that a just resolution can be achieved.
The first 70 future employees of Beaches St. Vincent have been selected and will leave the state for training at a Sandals own resort in the region on Monday, July 5th, 2021. This was announced on radio on Sunday by Minister of Finance Camila Gonzalez, who said the second batch of individuals will head out shortly after.
And that flight is now scheduled to leave next week, Monday, not Monday coming, next week, Monday. That is the first 70. The next 50, after the next 60, sorry, after that 70, have already been selected, and they will be notified over the course of the coming week. Remember, Sandals is going to hire 500 people, but they're hiring them by hotel. So the first 70 will go to a particular hotel, the next 50 will go to another hotel, and so on and so forth. And they notify the people in that way. So 70 have been selected. They'll be leaving not this week, but next week. And then about 2 weeks after that, the next 60 will be heading off. And in that way, we're going to get all the way up to 500 workers.
Sandals Resorts International began their recruitment drive on May 26, 2021, ahead of the highly anticipated future opening of their 4th Beaches location in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Over a three-day period, approximately 1,200 Vincentians were interviewed, with 500 persons making the cut. A contingent from Sandals International is currently on island to discuss a number of matters with the government on Beaches St. Vincent's project, which will replace the Bocaman Bay Resort. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Electricity Services Limited (VINLEC) has begun to upgrade the upgrade of its Cane Hall power plant, dubbed the Cane Hall Generation Expansion Project, with the replacement of 2 30-year-old generators with 2 new Wärtsilä generators and other upgrades. Manager of Engineering, Dr. Vaughan Lewis, said the old generators had become unreliable and costly to maintain, adding that the new generators will eradicate those concerns. He also outlined the budget for the project.
Try to maintain enough generation capacity to meet a reliability criteria. We would accommodate maintenance of a major generator and unexpected failure of another generator. So we need to have enough capacity in place to do that. And having these 2 generators in place would return us to a level where we would be more comfortable. Also, it would help us with our maintenance costs because they would be more efficient generators and they would be cheaper to maintain and operate. We entered into a competitive bidding process and we selected generators from diesel supplier Wärtsilä. We entered in a contract to provide the generators, installation and commissioning. The contract with Wärtsilä is for $6.2 million US, and the overall budget that we have is $17.5 to 18 million EC dollars.
Senior Generation Engineer Augustus Ambrose outlined the phase which the project is currently in, noting that the contract was signed in October 2020, with the work beginning 1 month later in November 2020. The design for civil and construction works, which are underway, began in April 2021.
As it stands now, the project is at the phase where the civil works are being done. One is the engine foundation, which is being rebuilt. Secondly, we are also doing what is called work on the auxiliary annex, the floor and the roof. We have decided to demolish and recast a new roof. And thirdly, there are some civil works taking place on the outside of the building, specifically in relation to building the foundation for the radiators, the pipe supports and the air filter supports. That's the civil works. We have had the arrival of about 13 containers of auxiliary equipment on the ground. The generators themselves have been shipped from Finland this week. It's now about the 5th of August. The generators will arrive. The electrical mechanical work should begin very, very soon when the civil works are completed.
Ambrose also noted the installation of the generators offers a teaching lesson for employees at the plants, as the last project to be undertaken of a similar nature was done 20 years ago in 2000. The Canal Generation Expansion project is scheduled to be completed in October 2021 after the testing and commissioning phases of the generators is completed. The Vinlex project's team is said to be working along with a civil engineer in Finland and an on-site manager from Wärtsilä to ensure the project's success. It is important to choose foods that cater for the vulnerable in the population, including the elderly, young children, pregnant and lactating mothers when preparing for a disaster. So said senior nutritionist in the Ministry of Health, Nicole France, and dietitian Kriya Samuel, who on NBC Radio's face-to-face program used the opportunity to highlight the foods a person should be consuming, noting that diet plays an important role in prolonging health and lifespan.
The best foods to eat, of course, would be your high fiber foods, your whole grains. Fiber helps with a lot of things. Fiber helps to prevent cancer. Fiber helps to control your numbers for diabetes and hypertension. It regulates the digestive system. So where do we get fiber from? Fruits and vegetables, peas and beans, whole grain cereals and things like that. So when we're talking about what foods would we suggest? Natural, wholesome foods. Then there are things to avoid, like this sugary stuff, the high-fat foods, the salty foods. These just tend to have a negative impact on our health.
As we enter the hurricane season, France and Samuel outlined some tips persons can employ to ensure they have nutritious foods on hand in the event that they are shut in or experience a power outage.
You know, we're in the hurricane season. What do I do? What you can do with your fruits and vegetables, blanch them, freeze them. But the trick there is that during a hurricane, unfortunately, we may lose power. Then some of these things might actually spoil along with other foods. But at least you have something. Canned vegetables. That's a possibility. They do have some sodium, yes. But the thing is that the key here is to rinse them off properly before using them to get rid of most of the sodium. But in order to prevent malnutrition, you have to prepare. So you stock up, yes, on your canned vegetables, frozen vegetables, yes.
So we would want to encourage persons when they're looking for canned fruits, they would want to choose fruits that are canned in their own juices instead of the heavy syrup to really cut back on the amount of sugar that would be consumed.
Suggestions were also given for a balanced breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the family using the food supplies stored to weather a hurricane or any other natural disaster.
For the hurricane season, there are some which are more healthier options than some. So when it comes to things like tuna and sardine, those would be much better options than, say, for instance, corned beef and salami, Vienna sausage, because those are extremely high in sodium. For instance, your whole grain bread with your sardine or your tuna and some form of fruit, okay? And it's best during the hurricane season to have whole fruits, as those would tend to preserve or stay a longer time before spoilage.
We can go with a can of red beans, wash them off under running water. Let's say we have gas, can cook that with some rice. We have grown provisions, the beans, we have the beans there for our fiber and protein. So we have a can of tuna, we can use that. If we have any things like onions, sweet peppers, we can cut those up into the tuna, also cucumbers or anything like that. The whole family can enjoy this. So for those who can do it in the water, soak the oats in some water, sprinkle some cinnamon on it, nutmeg on it, and you have your bowl of cereal. For the kids who may not want it with the water, you have their milk.
If you have some raisins, you can add some raisins too.
Or maybe banana also.
France also outlined the importance of having clean water stored of at least 1 gallon per day per person in every household, warning that contaminated water can lead to serious illness and even death in young children.